Today, we're sitting down with Jordan Harrison to talk about responsibility. Jordan is the former director of College Town at Reality Changers. He worked with over 2,500 8th through 11th grade first-generation college-bound students annually throughout San Diego. He developed and led the program, which focused on changing students' trajectories while creating college-going identities within under-resourced student population. Jordan is committed to changing the educational outcome of low-income, underrepresented, and first-generation students from underserved communities. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you very much for having me. Glad to be here.
Tell us, what does responsibility mean to you?
Yeah, to me, when I think about specifically my students, I think responsibility is their ownership and an action or getting something done and really seeing how they play a part in the success of a classroom, of a culture, or just a part, and knowing that they're important in it and they have a role in it to truly be successful.
So tell me, how do you foster the sense of ownership?
Definitely. A critical part of responsibility, I think, is also the importance of having a relationship and really understanding where students are at so that you can give them what I'll call like scaffolded responsibility, where you understand based off of who they are and what they care about, that you can give them something that they feel like this is something I can actually do. That's not too hard, not too easy, but something they can truly own.
And as a parent, I tend to always struggle in terms of giving them the right amount of responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
I have 3 children and they're also different. And so some are kind of hard versus my other twin is not so hard.
Yeah.
So how do you gauge and understand among all the students that you work with what is the right amount of responsibility?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes just a trial and error process. I wish there was something I could say that says, you do this with every student and this is perfect. One thing I'm also aware of is I'm almost a little critical of best practices. I think they're important, but I think what's more important is knowing the best processes for your student or for your child and making sure that my student's doing well in math or doing well in English, and so they might need a different level of responsibility in each. And so I think going back to that relationship, it's really knowing who they are, what their challenges are, what their strengths are, and then providing enough responsibility that allows them to truly grow and flourish.
So tell me, how do you communicate those responsibilities to them in a way that they see it as a positive thing to do instead of, another thing you're bossing me around about?
Yeah. And I think that's why in classrooms and communities, it's so important to co-create as much as you can with the students, to have them have a sense of ownership in it. If before you start a classroom, you say, hey, what are our expectations? Maybe a rotation system where someone could be the one who goes out and passes out passes or leads something. I think it's important that they feel like they're part of that co-creation process where it's not this top-down, I tell you what to do, but we say, let's create something together. And then before I know it, I can just step back and you just take over.
I really love this concept of co-creating. And I'm already trying to think, how does that look in households, right, as parents?
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering, for those students that you've worked with who maybe came in without this co-creation experience, how does that manifest behaviorally? How do you see it and how do you try to shift that mindset?
A lot of times at first, the students who I've worked with historically, when I say, okay, let's try something together, I think there's almost a sense of skepticism. They're like, I don't really know if I can trust you. Like, I don't really know. And I think as adults, sometimes it's on us to understand the power that we hold and to really be comfortable in relinquishing it. And that includes if the student possibly makes mistakes and fails and not being so angry with them that we don't give them more responsibility or challenge them again. So for me, I think it's a process of building trust with the student and saying, I truly trust you and I'm going to support you, but I'm not going to be overbearing on you so that you can really learn what responsibility is. And I think that's a hard part for us as adults. We really don't want to see our students fail, but understanding that failure, and in that failure is a learning, that we can truly support them so they can really be responsible and learn kind of the cost and the benefits of all their actions.
Yeah. And I think one takeaway I'm getting from what you're saying is also that it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a process of, as you mentioned, trial and error on both parts.
Yeah.
And of course, right when you think you figured it out, children change developmentally. And it's another hurdle of figuring each other out. So I know since Reality Changers started in 2001 with only $300, that's unbelievable. Your students have earned over, I can't even read this many zeros.
120 million.
That's a lot. And scholarships.
Yes, ma'am.
Walk me through that process. How did you manage to make this happen?
Yeah, it's a team and community effort. I think coming in eighth grade, one of the first things we have to have the students do is really develop this college going identity and see college as something that's possible. And then over time, with the necessary scaffolding and developmentally supporting them, having them understand that I can do scholarships, I can fill out a FAFSA, I can apply to these colleges, and to really have them see that I can actually be in college. And it ties in directly to this conversation on responsibility, because I think if you think about it, students are responsible every single day. They might just be responsible to some things we don't want them to be responsible to. And so part of my work was figuring out, how do I let students see and go on the process of seeing that college is something that you can be responsible for. It's something that you can do. And part of that was just building sub goals, supporting them, doing community service, vicarious learning, seeing people in the community who are doing things like them, and as many things as possible, learning from each other. So we did the near to peer model. So amongst each other, they learned. And then kind of those who are farther, myself, recent graduate from college, now in master's, we're all close in proximity. So nothing seems too far out, and they can really start to change their identity and see college as something that's possible.
I can't help but ask, now that you've shifted the mindset of what college means, what college provides, how do they do after college, and how do you continue that momentum?
I think that's where the work truly continues and where it lies, really figuring out how do we support to make sure that even with a college degree, that doesn't mean everything is going to be perfect. And so now with the increased responsibility of maybe financial planning or dealing with student loans, I think the concept is to really develop a mindset so that they're not relying on us. And I think that's what we really truly work for, building student agency and understanding that with agency and responsibility, it's understanding that we'll support you. And we want you to develop the necessary skills to be able to go out in the world and understand that things are going to be challenging. But with the skills you develop, you can truly make it anywhere.
It reminds me of taking risks. I know this whole college application process is not something to easily take risk on and to make mistakes. But yet at the same time, we want to foster the self-motivation and, as you mentioned, the agency. So they sort of need to make mistake and take risk. How do you create that safe environment where risks are allowed, but then still kind of like, this is the timeline to admissions. You need to do that.
Yes. And senior year is such a delicate time. There's so much support we can do before then. But if the FAFSA says that they're due on X day or scholarship says it's due on X day, you can come to me the day after, but there's not too much that I can do. And so I think one of the things that I really work with on students is before starting off with maybe $100, $200 scholarships, just so they can kind of learn the process of what does it actually look like to apply, understand the time that it takes them to do it, understand the challenges that they might expect. And then as they kind of go on, we'll find more maybe competitive scholarships so they can already be in the process of doing it. What I don't want is for students to kind of jump for the $1 million scholarship and never have applied for anything before, because if a timeline's missed or if they don't have their recommenders lined up, it can be a place where it's challenging. And so I think kind of to our talk on responsibility, it shows the necessary support from the beginning all the way till the end so that they can make it.
Yeah, I really love that. And that reminds me of sort of taking risk or taking responsibility, again, going from small to big. Not sort of putting a hit on your self-esteem and being disappointed. I think that's also a big thing to think about. So I want to leave you with one last question.
Okay.
You've certainly assumed a lot of responsibilities in your life so far. And in fact, you also gotten a master's degree in education at Harvard Graduate School of Education and earning a full ride fellowship as Urban Scholar. So how did you learn responsibility yourself?
I have to give it to my parents. I think I didn't get my first cell phone until I was in 12th grade in high school, 12th grade, senior in high school. My parents were like, we're not paying. We can't pay this for you. So you have to pay for it yourself. And I think that was like my first small instance of taking on some serious responsibility. It was like, if I want to be cool and have a cell phone and talk with friends, I need to get a job. I need to make sure bills are paid. I need to make sure things are done. I think that's a small moment, but I think it brought me at 12th grade into the necessary understanding of what does discipline look like? What does budgeting look like? How do you actually make sure you have the things that you need? And I think from there, I just understood that this is a discipline that I need. And then from there, it just kind of really took off. So really on my parents, talking to me about credit, talking to me about this is the things that you need to do. And then backing up and saying, if you can't pay your phone bill, you're not going to have a cell phone. And so gratefully, I haven't missed a cell phone bill since. So things worked out well.
Well, that's great. So with responsibility, it comes with great self-ownership and discipline.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jenny.
And thank you for tuning into 52 Essential Conversations.